Hi and welcome to The Practice Gap, the podcast for closing the gap between the practice you have and the one that you want. I'm Elizabeth, a chiropractor, a business owner, coach and entrepreneur on a mission to help you move from frustration and overwhelm to clarity, focus and joy in practice. 3, 2, 1, yeah. Hi, Aleksander Chaibi, and welcome to the studio. I am so happy to have you here. You're many things, and you are a chiropractor.
Yes.
And a physiotherapist, and you hold a PhD. Could you please tell a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Yes. First, thank you for having me. I've heard your podcast before. I find it very interesting. Yeah, it's true. I have 3 degrees. That has taken me a long time. I started off and graduated as a physiotherapist in 2003-04. Then I worked for a year in Bergen on the west coast in Norway. And then I traveled to Sydney and studied chiropractic. And since late 2007, I've been practicing in Oslo. And 2009-10, I think, I started thinking about doing research and I contacted a lot of different research groups in Norway because I was interested in headache disorders. And one guy outside Oslo at Aarhus, he found the study interesting.
Aarhus is a hospital.
That's a hospital, Norway. Yes, sorry.
Yes.
It's better to approach hospitals and research groups at hospitals because they normally have better funding possibilities. So that's the reason why I did that. And he found it interesting, even though he's a neurologist. And we started cooperating quite early, developing a research protocol, which took about 2.5 years. And then we obtained funding and started the project.
That's it's a long journey, and I see a lot of questions here. Let's start in the beginning. So you are a physiotherapist in Bergen.
Yes.
What made you move to Australia and become a chiropractor?
Well, that's a good question because I actually have a story there. Because when I started physiotherapy, I would say I was a bit immature. I didn't really know what I was getting at.
Like immature, like how old were you?
Was it 20 maybe? Or yeah, around 20. And I lived in Bergen then, and I applied different places and actually got accepted in the Netherlands. So that's where I did my study in Eindhoven. And I went to this Kilroy travel agency and I said, I need 1 ticket, 1 way to Eindhoven. And I ended actually up in Belgium. But I didn't realize I was in Belgium until I stood on the airport. And I was a little bit confused. And then there was actually a transit bus to Eindhoven. But that bus arrived about 11 p.m. and everyone was picked up except me. But I had a mobile phone at that time, so I was able to call a taxi, and I asked the taxi driver to drive me down to the cheapest motel in Eindhoven city. And the day after, I actually walked up to Fontis University, where I did my study.
What made you decide to become a physiotherapist?
Well, I'm interested in sports. I was a little bit interested in the human body at the time, but not really. I think I was more confused than anything, so I just had to start at something. Yeah, actually in 2nd grade of the physiotherapy study, I was maturing a little bit and starting to understand what I was actually doing. My grades improved a little bit as well. But then I realized in Norway we have this funding from the county where the physiotherapists receive a lot of money and are reimbursed by the government. But not everyone has that. About 30-35% of the Norwegian physiotherapists has it. And it's a little bit of a corrupt system. And I realized that, and I actually contacted some politicians and asked about it. I didn't receive an answer. So then I gave that up.
So already as a student you were a troublemaker?
No, not at all. I was seeking knowledge.
Seeking knowledge, that's a much better thing. Perfect.
So I realized this is a really mafia way to go, so I was trying to steer away from that. And that's where I thought, how can I extend my knowledge within the human body, because I was starting to get a lot interested in it, and so I considered manual therapy and chiropractic and other master degrees within physiotherapy, and then I ended up in Sydney because that was more attractive for me.
How was the first year you worked as a physiotherapist in Bergen?
Yeah, I was actually not in Bergen the first time. It was at the hospital as well, because my internship as a physiotherapist was split half a year at hospital, Førde Hospital, where I practiced different departments like orthopedic, neurology, and pulmonary departments. The second part of the internship, I practiced at a private clinic just in Bergen, and I got a good relationship with the owner there, and I just continued. But actually I did also work part-time at a psychiatric hospital as a physiotherapist as well, trying to help actually convicted psychiatric patients to have a better life.
Interesting. And then, so the decision, when did you decide? Like, what was the moment? Was this something like tipping point? Was there something somebody said or something you experienced? Like, what made you like, I'm doing another degree?
That was maybe at the beginning of my final year at physiotherapy. Because there's a long waiting list as well to get into a master program in physiotherapy. You need a lot of clinical experience, and you need some coursing, etc. And that road was a little bit too long for me. So then I applied in England and Denmark and Australia and even the United States. And in Australia, especially in Sydney, they don't have it anymore, but a qualifying program where I did a few more subjects in a qualifying year in addition to all the other subjects in order to get into the master. So I actually got accepted an exception for 1 year. So I did it in 3 plus internship in Norway.
So good. So you finished. How was what? Oh yes. Okay. So you choose Australia because of the beautiful weather, and it's far away, and of course you get this. You take away 1 year from the whole program. So you are done with school, and then you decide to go back to Norway. How was that?
That was all right because I knew where I was supposed to work.
Did you have a job before you?
I had a job because when I went back to Norway, I started the process, and I knew where I wanted to go. That's where I went. I had a perfect internship where I actually continued for 2 more years and learned a lot.
So then you are there. What happened? You said 2 more years. What happened? Then you've been working for 3 years.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
Then the guy I worked for, he sold his clinic, and the new owners didn't have the same philosophy as myself. So then I started up my own clinic in Oslo Centrum as well.
And how many years ago did you open up your own clinic?
That was in 2010.
2000, so that's 14 years ago.
Yes.
When you, how was the like when you went from a clinic where you worked to opening up your own clinic? What was the biggest challenges you had?
There was some challenges in terms of getting the full picture of how to run a clinic, negotiating with
the owners
of the building, licenses for different programs, etc. Also contracts in terms of assistants or other therapists in, because we are a multidisciplinary clinic. So just had to push through and get the knowledge, because even though the clinic I worked for was clinically exceptional, all the other factors which comes from running a clinic was not as good.
So how many people are you in your clinic? How many therapists is in your chiropractor? Or like how many people are in your clinic right now?
Right now, it's maybe about 20, I think.
20?
Yeah.
Is it one clinic or more than one clinic?
We have 2. We had 3, but we had to close one clinic. So now we have 2, and both are running pretty good. The Oslo clinic is twice as big as the Bergen clinic in terms of therapists. But size, it's equal.
Exactly. I suppose you didn't start out with 2 clinics and 20 people. When you first started out, was it only you, or did you have an associate, or what was how many rooms did your first clinic have?
It had, I think it was about 3. So it was me and a massage therapist to begin with. This was an old building to begin with. It looked like a really old boat, to be honest, with dark doors and narrow corridors, etc. But then we just expanded really quickly. We took one room after the other in the same floor.
Oh, so you're pretty lucky you had a building where you could just add on a room as you grew.
Yeah, we could at that time, because this is a huge building in Centrum, 8 floors and a lot of rooms. And it was run by a family as well. So we just talked to the landlord, and he was helping us throughout the growth process. The family sold the building in 2019, I think. And then new, more professional owners came in, and they want to restore the whole building. And then we took a little bit more, like 60, 70 more square meters, and took the whole 3rd floor. Ruined the whole clinic down to the concrete, and we built it up with an architect. So now it's really, really nice.
It sounds like you had from the overview, it sounds like a fairly smooth ride. But if for new people who would love to open a clinic and to have the growth to have like a bigger clinic, do you have any advice to give?
I would say this is a people business. We need to consider the environment, basically. With people, I mean, you need to trust the people you get in. They need to have a really good work ethic and work moral. And if they have a smile around the mouth, you come a really long way, because clinical skills can be worked on, but communication skills is a little bit harder, because that's something they've adapted throughout life. So during interviews, consider more the person's social abilities and interpersonal skills first, and then professional or practical skills second.
Do you have any good questions? Like if you're a clinic owner and you're interviewing a potential person who wants to work for you, do you have any like good questions or different question that you have found very valuable? Because I guess your experience, it increases with every interview you do.
Yeah. To begin with, it was probably more practical oriented. Now it's much more environmental and interpersonal skills oriented, along with work ethic and work moral. Because if the desire is there, the will and ability, you can achieve whatever you want. But some people don't have the will to build practice. And they will never succeed unless they take their reality check of what they actually want.
So if I would say, okay, Aleksander, I'm a chiropractor, I want to work with you. How would an interview look?
I would probably start off by asking you, all right, Elizabeth, who are you as a person?
Okay, so yeah, that's a good question.
Because an open question will often reflect how prepared they are and how they go about presenting themselves. And I get a lot of information about interpersonal skills. Some can be really self-inflicted, some could be really introvert, etc. And I get a lot of knowledge from there, and I basically a freestyle interview from there. But there are some key points I need to address. I need to address interest areas, see if they complement the clinic or if they can bring something new. I also need to ask them about the future.
How they see the future?
Yeah, how they see the future. If they
wishes and goals, maybe?
Yeah, wishes and goals, basically. If they like to attend courses, if they are interested in research, is a thing I'm interested in. But it's all a matter of gaining knowledge and using that in clinical practice and sharing it as well, not at least.
What's the biggest learning? What is the biggest kind of, when you look back at it, is like the biggest learning situation you were in, where you actually said, like, you got somebody into the clinic who was a really wrong fit? Have you had any of those experiences?
I've had a few.
How did you deal with it when you realized it's like, oh, this is a bad fit?
Yeah, we need to confront it, but it's difficult because you want to change a person. And it's basically the same as raising children. You need to try to find an entrance into communication. You need to help them realize what's going wrong. If it's professional skills, that's a little bit more serious than interpersonal skills. But I find both very valuable. And then we start off by just small talks, and I need to follow up. You need to follow up these conversations, maybe weekly. And if we don't see any change, you just need to tell the person that I don't think this is a right fit for us or for you. And I think you're better off moving on, because staying in that environment will affect the whole clinic. And you have, as an owner, you have a responsibility for all the therapists and the employees, not only your own practice or an individual therapist. But a general rule I've learned is try to focus on the successful parts of your business and not the negative parts, because human beings are really obsessed by negative things, and that really drains you for energy.
Yeah, good advice there. And I think a lot of chiropractors who run their own clinic, I mean, they're excellent clinicians, but most of us we never learned how to really run a business. And it's learning the hard way. And I do believe that we can learn from other people's experiences.
Definitely. And we can learn from other professionals as well. I actually started up the clinic in 2010 with a lawyer.
That's an interesting...
He was a patient of mine at the first place, and we developed a good relationship, and he was interested in health and I was interested in health, and he had a really good contact network, and he taught me a lot on negotiating and economy, etc. So that's a bachelor degree in economy just there. Practical learning.
Very cool. That's a new one. Probably we should all have those that kind of help. One last question on this session here. What are the factors you see in those who work for you? If it's a chiropractor, or physiotherapist, or osteopath, or a massage therapist, what are the qualities that make a really excellent practitioner?
Yeah, I think the absolutely most important is good communication skills with other therapists, but more importantly with the patient. Because if you have excellent communication skill around the rationale of your hypothesis diagnosis or your working diagnosis and your differential diagnosis, and the rationale for why the treatment or the self-treatment can help, and if the therapist is able to put that information on the level or maybe a little bit above the level of the patient to generate trust and credibility towards the patient, then the next step will be to work on the patient's confidence. And if I were to use a catchphrase here, I would say try to stimulate yes I can towards the patient. The other factor that is important is to have good diagnostic and practical skills as well, because that you can compensate on both sides. You can compensate by having a little bit reduced practical skills with excellent communication skills, or excellent practical skills and maybe a little bit reduced communication skills. But if you on the upper hand on both of those two, I consider them are really good therapists.
For the people who work with you, do you have what are the advice when they start out? What are like the 3 top advice you give them?
We actually have a routine or a guideline when we employ people. We go through communication. We have a maybe 30-40 slide presentation, 1 hour, and then follow up with Q&A. And then follow up with practical intervention. Maybe I observe or somebody else observe the therapist in action, and then give one-to-one feedback. Then we have like a practical workshop on journal writing, because that's really important. Most therapists, independent, maybe physiotherapists are a little bit better, but the rest, including physicians, are really terrible when it comes to journal writing. And that's something that I'm really interested in to improve journal writing. So we have a session on that as well. And then basically observe your colleagues, not only to learn practical tricks, but also to gain information about how they communicate with the patient, because every time you observe, you pick up one or two things that you can implement in your own style, and in time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you will develop a really nice way in terms of communication and practical skills, and then you become a really good clinician.
How many years?
I think
to become a really good
I think you'll be decent in 5, you'll be good in 10, and you'll be excellent in 20, and you never finish.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Aleksander. I will have you back for another podcast after this break. And just to sum up a little bit, you've had quite an interesting journey from being a physiotherapist, going to work a little bit, and then going back to school, and then starting to work, and then opening a small clinic, and now you have like 20 people working in your clinic. And we haven't even started talking about the research part, but we will get back to that for the next podcast.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.